Hello and welcome back to the Stronghold. I'm the Magi, and I thought now was the perfect time to take a look at the modern format playable for us budget players over on Magic the Gathering Online. Modern Horizons 3 has done exactly what it was expected to do, really shaking up not only Modern but multiple other formats. We're about to get the pros' take on the format, see exactly what is going on in their heads, and it's probably going to be years before we see this kind of turbulence in Modern again, so getting our bearings and making a plan now is really optimal timing. 2024 marks the 70th anniversary of the Godzilla franchise, and just like Godzilla, Modern Horizons 3 is going to be an absolute monster of a set. So if you want to throw your weight around just like Godzilla, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you find this video helpful, be sure to share it out on your favorite social media platform. Now, what were we talking about? Oh yeah, right. As this video releases, the pros are at MagicCon Amsterdam, and they're going to be giving us their thoughts and feelings about the modern format as they play in the Pro Tour. Early on, Modern really seemed to ignore Modern Horizons 3, with most competitive players sticking with their tried and true decks. There really wasn't much shakeup, but this appears to have mostly been a supply issue. Since then, we have seen the expected shakeup in Modern, with at least 5 new decks coming onto the format, old favorites getting new toys, as well as other decks that didn't really seem to open any presents here on Modern Horizons 3 morning, and to some degree getting left behind. This was actually a snapshot of the meta just before the explosion, and as you can see, most of these decks don't have particularly good win rates. Only 4 decks there out of 8 are really above 55%, which is what we as budget players really look for. Amongst those new decks was Ruby Storm. This deck didn't even show as a blip on the meta anywhere. It has since become the most played deck in Modern, and oh yeah, the price on that deck doubled. Because let's not pretend, these decks are not cheap. The average Tier 1 deck for Modern is over 260 tickets on MtGO, with many decks having versions that are easily 50% more expensive. Ruby Storm went from about 200 tickets to over 375 in less than a week. So with all this turmoil going on and the prices being what they are, what's a budget player to do? Because, well, you don't want to invest the equivalent of $260 into a deck and then just have it become irrelevant because of a meta shift. It's all pretty whack, and, well, therein may lie the solution. That's right, the Goblin Whack deck family might just be the way for us to go as budget players. Of course, these decks are so named because of cards like Goblin Bushwhacker, as well as Reckless Bushwhacker, that kind of give you a go wide and get big strategy all at once. Of course, things like Legion Loyalist, Goblin Guide, Foundry Street Denizen, Battlecry Goblin, all of these kind of contribute to those same concepts. Then base removal like Lightning Bolt, and of course the ubiquitous Goblin Grenade in these decks give you everything you need to finish out your opponents. Even the sideboards for these end up being probably like 5 tickets. And of course, if you're doing any sort of best of one play or just testing, You don't really need the sideboard on day one, although of course it just gets better. Some of the big costs here are the Legion Loyalists, the Goblin Guide, and of course the aforementioned and namesake Goblin Bushwhacker. But beyond that, the rest of this deck is pretty inexpensive. And in fact, when you switch it over to tickets, even those expensive cards really drop down. Goblin Guide stays one of the more expensive cards overall. But then you're talking about like Reckless Bushwhacker and Lightning Bolt. And as you can see here, this entire deck can be put together right now on MtGO for between 7 and 8 tickets. Which is still a lot for a new budget player, don't get me wrong, because you start with 0 tickets. But the idea here is this is a completely borrowable deck, and investing in some of these cards will pay benefits in the long run because these cards see a lot of play. For instance, if you were to visit a site like MtG Goldfish and just look at the various whack deck options that are out there. I've looked several times over the last few weeks, and at any given time you can find 3 to 5 very budget-friendly options. Of course, the ubiquitous 8 and 12 whacks, Kaldatha whack, there's a whack in sack right now. All of these decks pretty much universally built by Seth, better known as Saffron Olive. So all credit where credit is due. But when we look at a couple of these decks, what you're seeing on screen here is kind of a summary deck list. Those in pink backgrounds are cards that are used in multiple versions of the deck. And then the gray backgrounds are pointing out cards that are also highly played in other formats, even if they only appear in this version of whack. And when you eliminate things like, I don't know, basic mountains, as you can see, almost every card that we're talking about here has multiple iterations across this family, making them very strong values and good investments for the long run. And when you look for these cards in other formats, of course, you find very similar style archetypes for both Pauper and Pioneer, having at least a third of the deck in each case coming from cards that will cross these formats, making this particular strategy just more and more attractive. Of course, all of these decks across all of these formats are pretty much borrowable under the current $11 MtGO threshold that is available. But the more of these cards that you invest in will allow your borrow resources to stretch even further. So instead of maybe able to have 1 or 2 decks at a time, you're starting to stretch to 2 to 3 or maybe even more. In particular, when you look at staples like Lightning Bolt appearing in multiples of these lists, that not only are going to be very playable here, but playable in many decks in many formats, making investments in these deck lists just really becomes paramount. I think this is the best thing a Magic Online player, particularly of a budget persuasion, can be doing with their resources early on in order to grow their collection and allow them to participate in more ways. Now, if I can remember to be a good YouTuber, I'm going to put all of these lists over on my EtherHub and cross-link them and do all those cool things. However, if for some reason I forget, yell at me down in the comments and remind me, and we'll take care of that right away. But these decks are such a good idea. They're such a good investment. I think everybody should take a look at them, particularly those looking to get into true Modern, true Pioneer, true Pauper over on MtGO. It's hard to argue that there is a better overall place to start. And in fact, just for the old S&Gs, I ran all 3 of the Pauper, Pioneer, and Modern lists. I only excluded the 1 copy of Lightning Bolt and the 2 copies of Chain Lightning, which I know are in the starter sets for MtGO. Some of these other cards might be too, and I just don't know them off the top of the head. But to get a main deck on all of these, and in the case of Great Furnace and Crucible of Defiance, just substituting a Mountain, buying every single card outright would only run you 10.34 tickets in today's market. I also did not necessarily maximize looking at every particular version, so you might could even find some of these cheaper or be willing to kind of mix and match some of the cards to save a few fractions of tickets here and there, but all in all pretty affordable. In fact, if you were to split these lists across the two loan sites, you could easily borrow everything for all three of these decks at one time. And again, that's not taking into account that if you just out and out buy some of these cards, your loan resources will continue to go further. So again, all in all, a very affordable pathway to multiple formats on Magic the Gathering Online, and this is really what I recommend. 10.34 tickets. You can generate that essentially for free within a year. And if you don't believe me, keep an eye out here on the Stronghold for future MtGO content, where I'm going to be talking about how to do just that. And before we go, I want to take just a moment to thank my totally awesome patrons for supporting me and allowing me to apply my passion into a community. And of course, before we go, I've got some suggestions for your next step.